It's August 24th, 2013, and another remarkable event is about to be uncovered by Arion, Rebecca, and Olly, the Retrospectors.
Graffiti, from the Italian graffio, meaning scratch, is not the same as street art or a mural. It is essentially vandalism, without much philosophical thrust beyond I was here. And yet, since tagging first took off in 1960s Philadelphia, it has spread worldwide at a rapid rate, a fact commemorated today in history in 2013, when Philly's first tagger, Darryl McCray, aka Cornbread, was honoured in the Graffiti Hall of Fame, which he then presumably defaced.
Yeah, and the Graffiti Hall of Fame, weirdly, is actually in Harlem in New York. That's become a sort of sacred site for street artists, this legal mural space come cultural landmark. And it's played host over the years to some of the best-known artists of the scene up to the kind of 1980s, 1990s. But that year's event drew a really, really big crowd because people had come to honour Cornbread, who, as you say, was one of the very first progenitors of the slightly illegal, questionable, is it art, practice of writing your name on walls, aka graffiti.
The Godfather of Graffiti, they called it.
Yeah, I mean, the Graffiti Hall of Fame sounds quite incongruously grandiose, but it's actually a schoolyard. It's a playground at the Central Park East Elementary School in Harlem, which is why you can only visit at the weekends. If you look at the Google reviews, a lot of people are like, came to see us with my friend and somebody got shot down the street. And I was like, But McCray himself, not from New York, from North Philadelphia, where he had a pretty rough start in life. He ended up going to a reform school at the age of 10 after setting fire to his school. He said it was in revenge after a gym teacher hit him, which caused him to wet himself in front of his classmates. So he went back, set the school on fire, went to reform school. And it was there that he got his nickname, which was given to him by the institution's cook in response to McCray's complaints about the canteen only serving plain white bread rather than cornbread, which is what his grandmother made at home. He told Philadelphia Weekly in 2020 that the cook, a Mr. Swanson, at one point physically threw him out, shouting, "Keep this cornbread out my kitchen." And he started scrawling that name on the walls of the facility in marker pen. Not quite tagging, because prisoners have been writing their names in their cells for centuries, and tourists and soldiers and other travellers have written their names at famous landmarks. But according to his telling, what was different about it was that in the reform school, it was gangs who tended to write the name of their gang. Because, of course, he wasn't the first person to write something on a wall. Gangs were using it to mark their territory, but he was the first to just write his name for the sake of it.
Spray paint was invented in 1949. So he'd started with magic markers, but once he became a teenager and enjoyed the idea of defacing his youth development centre with his name all over everything, then he wanted to take it out to the city at large, and spray paint was around, which meant that people, Philadelphia citizens, started noticing the word cornbread everywhere, and that raised questions. Who is this guy? Why is he doing it? The fact that it does have its origins in, he's effectively in an education facility and he likes a certain type of bread is quite sweet.
Yes.
I think, it really marks out the fact that he wasn't in a gang. He wasn't tagging the names of a gang because he wasn't that kind of guy. Actually, he liked bread.
Well, the other sweet aspect of the story is the fact that when he started to really get known in Philadelphia, what he was tagging on walls was partly cornbread, but he also started tagging Cornbread Loves Cynthia. It's a love story. So he went around the whole city proclaiming his love for Cynthia. I didn't actually manage to uncover much about her.
She was a girl at his junior high school, and apparently her parents moved her away to get her away from him because he had a bad boy reputation.
Yeah, wow.
But also she'd been complaining to him about the fact that everyone's asking is that she'd been identified as Cynthia. But no one could work out who Cornbread was. And she'd said to him as a mate, this guy keeps spraying my name everywhere.
But that aspect of it, that he was trying to get out not only his name, but a thing that was how he felt about the world, I think is in some way reflective of what tagging became. This is my statement about me and what my gang represents.
Yeah, McCray, speaking later, was talking about why graffiti artists targeted buses and subways. One reason, obviously, is they're quite easy to get into. You can get into a depot or into a tunnel at night and work quite easily. But he also said, I knew that if you walked the bus routes, you had a whole bus full of people, and every time it stops, you'll read my name. You couldn't help but read my name because I was the only one doing it. The whole town belonged to me. I demand your attention. I had to have it. You had no choice but to give me your attention. And it's not really hard to sort of of put the pieces together why teens from these deprived, disenfranchised areas of urban blight might be drawn to this kind of art form that forces their fellow citizens to acknowledge them, even if it's very briefly, even if it's reluctantly. It's saying, we are here, you have to pay attention to us. And it was, it may not look like art at first glance, especially at the very early tagging was really...
I mean, it is crap.
Yeah,
it's just his name.
It
is just his name.
I mean,
he's not an artist. It is just his
he
name.
did put a crown over the B. But if you think, the point being that a tag is a motif rather than a message. It's not saying this is our turf. It's not saying so-and-so loves so-and-so. It is just saying, look at me, this is who I am. They actually called themselves writers at the time. They didn't have the language of tagging yet.
It is kind of saying this is our turf, isn't it? I mean, I think specifically from a black perspective, it is saying this is the city that belongs to black youth as well. We're in the 1960s. Black youth felt and actually were being maligned in cities like Philadelphia. Outside of gangland culture, if you didn't want to be part of a gang, like he didn't, as I said, he was in a group that was named after a black Greek fraternity from college. And they would compete with each other, who was best dressed, who had the dopest dance moves. And it was, I think, partly a political act to say, we're here and this city belongs to us as well. And that's why when it escalated then into hip-hop, and tagging becomes one of the things, along with emceeing, that you do as part of hip-hop, it's because it's a statement of saying, this blank wall is not yours, it's mine as well, and I live here.
And not just this blank wall, but one of the things that Cornbread did in the very early days was that he tagged an elephant. He went round the zoo and tagged pretty much all of the sort of stationary, non-organic things, but then he also managed to tag an elephant. And I think that is, again, another statement of himself and his occupation of the city in question.
But what made Cornbread stand out wasn't his artistry, it was his sense of showmanship. The incident you were talking about, Arion, where he tagged the elephant, that was because a fellow tagger called Cornelius Hosey was killed in a gang shooting in 1971, and the Philadelphia press wrongly identified him as being behind the Cornbread tag because his nickname was Corn, so it's easy to see how you could make the mistake. But most people would find that extremely annoying. McCray saw an opportunity, so he snuck into the zoo and he sprayed Cornbread Lives on the elephant. It created this huge sense of excitement around him. And also made me think, who would have enjoyed this? It's flashy, it's fucking with animals, P.T. Barnum. It's got that Barnum spirit of what can I do with an elephant that will get me a lot of attention.
Street Barnum.
To be fair, it earned him Street Barnum. It earned him another 9 months in reform school, but he obviously felt that it was worth it. He also tagged the Jackson 5's aeroplane when they came to Philadelphia.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's cool.
Which is
cool.
very
You're
cool.
marking the elephant, not cool.
Yeah.
Jackson 5 aeroplane, cool.
Right off. He would also get his friends to call in fake crimes so that when the police turned up, he could go and tag their cars. So, he was really, cool. He was operating, he's playing 4D chess.
I mean, for all that expression of self-identity, it's kind of notable that on this day that we're recalling, people had never actually seen him. Like, this was the first encounter with Cornbread, the person. And
he was 59 at this point.
Yeah, and he turned up in, like, a really nice suit. And, this was an opportunity for all the now fans to see the man behind the myth. And so it's kind of interesting that you've got this sort of person come to life. And often your experience of taggers is only in their tag. Like you and I and anyone would have no idea, for the most part, who taggers are.
And he was interviewed on this day, and I think he felt an onus to tell future generations not to follow his path, even though he was being celebrated for his tagging. He said, quote, "Things have changed. You got to go to school, be a professional. Most graffiti artists aren't going to make money." But of course, that in itself is a response to the changing context that we were alluding to earlier, which is that people were buying his original works.
And also maybe he wasn't quite projecting to the future that we now inhabit, where people are definitely buying the works of street artists.
Yeah, I mean, he did reform quite young, actually. In 1984, he joined Mayor Wilson Goode, the first black mayor of Philadelphia. He had formed this network called the Anti-Graffiti Network, an initiative to both clean graffiti off existing walls and to channel young taggers towards more legitimate avenues. And so he was working with them in the 1980s. So he gave it up fairly fast. One of the reasons that he gave up tagging was that he was approached by movie producers who he'd come to their attention because after he tagged the Jackson 5's plane, the tag was still on it when it went back to Los Angeles. So it made a bit of news in LA as well. And he came to the attention of these movie producers.
So weird, isn't it? I mean, Michael Jackson steps off a plane and someone goes, "But who's Cornbread?"
Yeah.
You think that they would scrub it before they got back on?
Yeah.
I mean, so they had said to him, we're going to make a film about your life. And he ended up moving out to LA and trying to get work as an actor. He thought they were going to make this biopic of him. It didn't pan out. He ended up going back to Philadelphia. And he's basically, when you read interviews with him, I think at this point he's kind of accepted this elder statesman of graffiti status that he's got. But I think in the 80s and 90s, he was in and out of prison, drug addiction, and he comes across as being very bitter about the fact that he didn't get what he felt was promised to him, that he was sort of used and then discarded and never really got to make money. It's a bit like
when we did the episode about the founders of hip-hop, isn't it? Same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like they created something that then became commercialized, but not for the benefit of them.
And I think it must be such a weird sort of tension to go, I know it's illegal, I know it's bad, I know it's led to art, but maybe it isn't art in its own right. And yet it's provided me with my identity and my livelihood. So yeah, he's evidently full of uncertainty over what the significance of his art is.
Have you ever been a tagger?
I have tagged once.
Have you?
Yes.
Forgive me, Father, for I have tagged.
Yeah, I've never said this out loud, let alone on a podcast. But yeah, I tagged... I decided my tag was Hoogie.
Oh my God, this is great. This is so much better than I could have imagined. How old were you and where did you write it?
I would have been about 15. It was just around the corner from my school. I had a friend who was an actual tagger, and I used to go around with him sort of like loitering in the background while he did his thing. He was like, you should do yours. And I was like, well, I don't really have a thing.
Oh, no. So your very first ever tag was on an actual wall. You didn't practice first writing it down?
No, it wasn't good. It was pretty much, it looked like Cornbread's work in that he really has just written Cornbread.
Yeah.
I wrote the word Hoogie in aerosol on a wall. It was a cricket scoreboard near the oval that's near to my school.
Oh my God, you're so rebellious. I'm sure you'll be getting the call from the Graffiti Hall of Fame anytime soon. Australia Outreach Office.
Only a matter of time.
This episode first aired last year exclusively to members of Club Retrospectors.
Join today and unlock a new episode this Sunday.
Patreon.com/retrospectors